we usually carry around. I want to highlight the ACEF youth engagement again, and we have a youth lounge this year from 2 p.m. onwards in Annex 2 that's located on that side of the hallway. Drop by. It's meant to be an informal opportunity to speak to some of the youth that are here at this conference, and I think some of us who have been in the energy space for a few more years can, I think, definitely learn from the youth, but also share some of our insights that we've gained over our work. So please, I encourage you to go there. This year, another new thing is our lunch talks on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You know, grab a bite and then have a chance to just relax and listen to some new initiatives that are happening, and we'll hear about one during this session in particular. But I encourage you to just drop by, and again, on the schedule, you can find out where those are. And then lastly, our receptions, a way to close off the day for the first 3 days of the conference. The main reception is in the dining room, but I also want to highlight this year that just for from 5:30 to 6:30, we've carved out a space for women to interact specifically and network amongst themselves. This is our way to create space for women in the energy sector, and it's just something we're trying this year. And as usual, when we try things at ADB, we welcome feedback. If it works, please tell us. If it can be improved, please tell us as well. So next slide. One of the things we just wanted to highlight this year is a code of conduct. This aligns with ADB guidance of how we're to act as professionals at ADB, and we're just simply applying that to the conference. It's just a reminder that this is a professional event. We want you to enjoy yourselves, but act in an appropriate way. So just wanted to highlight that. You can find this on the app and on the screens as well over the course of the week outside the auditorium. Next. I think this is our last item. Anyone who has been sponsored by ADB, this is how to find your allowances and any other expenses that are covered to your cost. We try to do that at the beginning of the week to get this all sorted so that we don't have to do anything after you've left ADB. Is that it? Oh, yes. No. Very importantly, want to highlight our sponsors this year. From the Islamic Development Bank, CREATE, the SE for All, Sustainable Energy for All, Shift C project, the Climate Technology Center and Network, CTCN from the UN, and as well as CLEVA. That is an electric car company that is new and up and coming, doing work across Asia and specifically in the Philippines. These are our sponsors that have helped us to put together this great event this year, along with ADB and along with our partners. So I just want to acknowledge their support of making ACEF a great event this year. I think that's it. I will pass it back on to Suzanne. But again, I'm glad we've started this, and we have a great week ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing these housekeeping rules, David. When you choose a partner, you should always choose an optimist, is one of the nice quotes. So we're very happy to welcome our partners this year, the partners to deliver the Clean Energy Forum. And we have with us Gloria Steele from USAID and Chang Seop Kim, the president of the Korea Energy Agency, and Keisuke Sadamori, director of Energy Markets and Security International of the Energy Agency. And I'd like to invite now, please, Gloria to provide her remarks, which will also frame USAID's contribution and partnership with ADB and with Asia and the Pacific on the clean energy agenda.
Thank you, Suzanne. Excuse me, but I'm about to lose my voice, so I hope I don't lose it in the middle of these remarks. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank people who've worked with us to make this happen. Thank you very much to ADB President Nakao, Vice President Sumas Bambang Susantono for their continued partnership. I'd like to thank the Korea Energy Agency President Kim and the Energy Agency Director, Sadamori. And most importantly, I'd like to thank members of the Asia Clean Energy community who are here today. For 13 of the 14 years that the ACEF has been happening, USAID has been co-chairing and co-partnering in this, and we're grateful for all who have worked to partner with us. The United States is proud to work with the ADB, the Korea Energy Agency, and the International Energy Agency, and so many partners of ACEF across the region on a very critical issue, a critical sector, which is energy. The projected demand for energy in Asia and the investments needed to support that demand are truly staggering. While countries across Asia are at different stages of development and have unique country contexts, many face similar challenges within the energy sector. These are the high cost of electricity, lack of reliable energy sources, lack of regional connectivity, financially weak utilities, and environment and social impacts associated with rapid infrastructure growth. Despite these challenges, however, there are a number of opportunities that exist. As we heard earlier, and renewable energy sources costs are going down significantly. There are ambitious clean energy targets, and there are a lot of innovations in this sector. And these are something to look forward to. Indeed, a rapid deployment of renewable energy will help secure an affordable and reliable energy future. That is why the United States has made work on the energy sector a key tenet of our Indo-Pacific strategy. Last year, Secretary Pompeo announced the Asia Enhancing Development and Growth Through Energy Initiative, or Asia EDGE. I think you will hear more about Asia EDGE throughout the week. This U.S. and government initiative seeks to strengthen energy security, increase energy diversification and trade, and expand energy access across the Indo-Pacific region, spanning from the west coast of the United States to the west coast of India. The United States is committed to helping build sustainable energy markets that are needed to unlock investments and strengthen local capacities so that countries are able to manage their rising energy demand. Helping to strengthen local capacity to manage countries' own development is a key priority of USAID's journey to self-reliance. This is a goal we have for the countries where we work across the globe, to work with countries to get them to a point where they are self-reliant and leading their own development. Asia EDGE will draw on the expertise and resources of the U.S. government and the private sector and international financial institutions. We are building off of the successes and lessons that we have learned from years of U.S. government engagement in this sector in the region. And across the continent, USAID has already started advancing the goals of Asia EDGE. And the technology and market innovations continue to inform our energy programs and our approach to development assistance. In Indonesia, for example, and I will give a few examples of work that we have done, USAID has mobilized approximately $1.5 million since 2015 towards the country's renewable energy development, expanding access to clean energy for roughly 1.3 million people while improving the country's energy security. Through our collaboration with ASEAN Center for Energy, USAID is supporting the ASEAN Power Grid Initiative to update the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan study. The ASEAN Power Study is important because it will determine the necessary interconnection transmission infrastructure needed to facilitate cross-border electricity trade. It will also help to create a more integrated electricity market, improve regional energy security, and facilitate efficient energy regional use across Asia. In Vietnam, USAID is supporting the Regional Energy Buyers Alliance, which is a large multinational corps with aggressive energy commitments that is working with the government of Vietnam to rapidly expand access to renewable energy across the country. India, the third largest global consumer of electricity, will be the largest consumer by 2030. To help meet India's growing demand, Especially for renewables, USAID partnered with California's Santa Clara University to create a business development incubator that has attracted more than 40 million in private sector investment to date. This has provided energy and energy services to more than 1.2 million consumers to date. And right here in the Philippines, over the last 2 decades, the United States has helped to enable greater private sector participation in electricity generation and transmission. In Marawi City, for example, USAID helped to rebuild power facilities, providing 205 streetlights in 4 temporary shelters in the province, benefiting more than 7,000 internally displaced people. I'm also pleased to note that in the Philippines, the energy sector has some of the highest rates of private sector participation in all of Southeast Asia. And this is critical because at USAID, and of course I know that all of you do, believe that private sector is the single most powerful force in lifting lives, strengthening communities, and accelerating partner community self-reliance. Incentivizing greater private sector investment also helps unlock new financing streams and greater choice of approaches and partners for development and for impact. Partnering for Impact, the theme of this year's forum, recognizes the important role of partnerships in scaling up energy transition. Partnerships are essential to strengthen commitments, build capacity, and achieve development results. Speaking of partnerships, I'm very proud to announce that just a few minutes ago, we launched a partnership with ADB with the intent of contributing from USAID up to $100 million to accelerate the transition to a sustainable and secure energy sector in Asia. The agreement will meet our mutual commitment to build sustainable energy markets, which are needed to unlock investments and strengthen local capacities so that countries in Asia are able to meet the rising demand in energy sector. We have been a proud partner with the ADB for many decades. Our new objective is to strengthen the energy sector across Asia in order to help millions of people in this region. In closing, I'd like to thank all of you for your participation in this important forum. I know that this week's events will generate stimulating discussions, innovative ideas, and fruitful partnerships. After all, it is through partnerships, especially local partnerships, that can make the biggest and most sustainable impacts. Thank you all very much for your commitment and dedication to advancing clean energy in this critical part of the world. I wish you great success in this week and in the future as we work together to design smarter, cleaner energy solutions for the people of Asia. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Gloria Stiele is the acting assistant administrator of USAID. I missed to mention your title. The next partner is from the Korea Energy Agency, Chang-Sap Kim, and I'd like to invite you, please, to give your opening remarks on behalf of your agency.
Thank you. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am Chang-Sap Kim, the President of Korea Energy Agency of Korea. It's a great honor to welcome you to the Asia Clean Energy Forum 2019, the premier networking and knowledge sharing event for clean energy and energy efficiency in Asia. The Republic of Korea used to be a country with 4 distinctive seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. However, spring and autumn has been noticeably shortened recently, with a longer and hotter summer and cooler winter. The climate is changing, really. The U.S. Secretary of State has described climate change as the most threatening weapon of mass destruction that is crucial to the survival of mankind, along with the nuclear weapons. In this line, not only the major OECD countries, but also the countries all over the regions and world are striving for a climate change response. As the leader of this action, ADB has announced the Strategy 2030 to respond to climate change, as well as to dedicate poverty, gender equality, and rural development for prosperous Asia-Pacific region and its sustainable growth. Also, the importance of climate change response was highlighted in the 52nd annual meeting in Fiji, announcing the plans for budget and manpower investment in the next 30 years. I applaud for ADB's strong will and dedication. The Republic of Korea and KEA would like to engage in the ADB's wonderful contributions with active cooperation in the future. KEA has introduced to the Korean government and the KEA introduced the renewable energy 30-20 for climate change response and energy transition in the country. We want to change our energy mix. This will increase the share of renewable energy generation from now approximately 7% to 20% by 2030 and reduce the reliance of fossil fuel use with more renewable energy supply and the efficiencies. Also, the hydrogen economy roadmap that used to hydrogen as a major energy source in the future was announced to boost up the supply of eco-friendly vehicles. Also, we want to create jobs and promote industries. In this sense, the cooperation is very important. It's very crucially important. The our KEA, is in close cooperation with other international organizations to accelerate clean energy supply, and improve the energy efficiencies. In that sense, especially in the Asia-Pacific region, the cooperation with ADB is very crucial. As the theme of the ACEF this year, partnering for impact, the KEA continues its close partnerships with ADB, of course, other international organizations, such as World Bank, ADB, USAID, etc. But at this time, for us, ADB is the most strong partner of all. With the signing MOU in 2012, the cooperative efforts for clean energy supply and energy efficiency improvement in various sectors and have started and lasted for last 8 years. 8 years. We have 8 years history with ADB. Particularly, KEA and ADB have collaborated and achieved significant accomplishments in these projects, such as solar PV microgrid installation in Cobrado Island, an energy audit consulting program for energy efficiency in the buildings of Bangladesh and Maldives, and etc. many other areas. This is very practical advances. We think that. Currently, we have promoted the smart LED street lights pilot project to improve energy efficiency and security in Vietnam. I'm sure that this would be the one of the remarkable collaborative projects of ADB, KA, and Vietnam government. Today, many sector experts and leaders from over 70 countries attended here. We all are looking forward to be a part of over 40 sessions and workshops for climate change response and clean energy supply. I hope everyone here could make the best use of this forum to share their thoughts and enhance the partnering throughout 5 days of deep dive workshop, special events, and main sessions. The Korea we have many stories. Some stories is very successful stories, but the other side, we have also very miserable stories also. Such a kind of these trial and error experiences can be a very, very valuable asset in our corporations. To this end, I'd like to remind you all the Kyrex Hall 2019 is our business. The most famous, prestigious renewable energy conference. It will be held on the coming October in Seoul, Korea. The Kyrex Hall 2019 will present the most practices and experiences of Korea's energy transition and renewables in the world, with the world. Once again, I appreciate the work you have put into the forums and active participation. I look forward to see the ACEF opens great opportunities for all participants in this room today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Kim. I think you reminded us of the urgency of climate change and also the need to always talk about what works and what doesn't and be open about failure. So that's an important part of partnerships. We'd like to invite now, please, Kizuke Sadamori, the Director of the Energy Market and Security International Agency, to provide the last remarks from our partners, please. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, this is my humble effort for the paperless participation. So it is a great pleasure to be with you today for this Asia Clean Energy Forum Plenary. This event is one of the most important on the global energy calendar, and therefore IEA is delighted and proud to be an ACEF knowledge partner. So thank you very much for including us here. Is it working? Yeah. So 2018 was actually an exceptionally dynamic year for the energy, with the energy demand growth accelerating to 2.3%, the highest growth in the last decade. And this growth was mainly driven by the global economic growth, and also the higher heating and cooling demand in some parts of the world because of the climate situation. If we look at which fuels have provided this growth, you can see that all fuels they posted growth, with fossil fuel meeting 70% of the growth in total energy demand. And gas actually accounted for around 45% of the growth. Oil and coal demand also grew and accounted for about around 1/4 of the entire demand growth. Renewable, of course, grew by over 4% and met around 1/4 of the growth in the total primary energy demand. Nuclear also grew by 3.3% last year, with generation reaching the level of the pre-Fukushima level. While we saw the economic and energy demand growth rising strongly last year, energy investment in Asia has actually steadily declined in the past 5 years. This decline has been driven especially by the lower capital expenditure on upstream fossil fuel production, as well as a small decrease in thermal generation investment since 2014, potentially linked to the moderate the energy price levels. Indeed, these declines have been offset to some extent by increases in investment in renewable generation, grids to integrate these generation sources, and also the energy efficiency. The global emission picture, however, shows that not nearly enough is being done to curb the emissions of the greenhouse gases from our energy systems. So after 3 years of very small or the negative growth in emissions, 2017 saw a large increase. And then in 2018, the global emission grew by even greater rate of 1.7% and reached a historical high of 33 gigatons. So that means that there is a growing disconnect between the calls from the government and scientists and what's happening in the market, what's happening on the ground. There are some positive elements, of course. So we would have seen even higher increase in emissions without the coal to gas switching led by US and China, energy efficiency, and the growth of renewables. And energy efficiency was actually the largest brake on emission growth in 2018, but its contribution was around 40% lower than in 2017, and largely due to the continued slowdown in energy efficiency policy implementation. This is from the IEA's Tracking Clean Energy Progress Report. This is our latest and most comprehensive assessment of the clean energy transitions. We assess the latest information on 45 energy technologies and sectors and evaluate whether the technology or sector is on track with the IEA's World Energy Outlook's Sustainable Development scenario. This SDS, Sustainable Development Scenario, represents a pathway to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement on climate change, delivering universal energy access, and reducing air pollutions. Overall, only 7 technologies are currently on track with the Sustainable Development scenario, sustainable path. The power sector as a whole remains not on track, with the CO2 emissions rising by 2.5% in 2018. And actually, coal was still responsible for 80% of this increase, with generation increasing by 2.6%, and remains the largest source of generation. In the SDS, emissions from the power sector need to fall on average by more than 4% per year toward the 2030. Solar PV remains on track, green, which is good, but annual capacity additions of the solar PV and also the renewable power as a whole leveled off in 2018, and that's raising concerns about meeting the long-term climate goals. Industry sector also needs a lot more efforts, so increasing energy efficiency, the uptake of the renewable fuels, research and deployment of the low-carbon process routes, such as the CCUS or even the hydrogen-based production, are all critical. By the way, IEA launched the new hydrogen report at the G20 Energy Ministers meeting in Japan last weekend. And also the energy integration technologies, including the smart grids, energy storage, demand response, and hydrogen, they all play a critical role in increasing the flexibility of the energy systems. and they can help integrate greater shares of the variable renewables and help accommodate the large-scale electrification of the transport, heating, or the industry process needed in this sustainable development path. Energy storage is actually now on track as the new installation doubled, led by Korea, China, US, and Germany, and other countries. So, given the scale of the challenge just described in ensuring the clean energy future, it is critical that all technology sectors, including the IEA, ADB, along with all the colleagues present today, redouble efforts in this regard, working together and with countries and governments in this critical region. Like the ADB, the IEA is certainly doing so. Through our Clean Energy Transition Program and other efforts, and working in this region on technical assistance and energy policy development directly with China, India, ASEAN members, and other countries in the Central Asia. And the IEA promotes the policy change that can drive the clean energy transitions, and focusing on a number of areas. And these areas include the renewable integration, power system developments, better energy efficiency policy, enhanced the energy data and the statistics, long-term energy transition planning and forecasting, sectoral analysis, and technology deployments. And of course, the ADB has a critical role to play in this regard, and IEA is therefore proud to be a knowledge partner for this, the ACEF forum, and a close collaborator with the ADB in various the projects. And close collaboration of this kind, which draws on the strength and the synergies of our respective organization in technical analysis and also in financing, is critical in driving the sustainability and the security of energy systems in Asia. Many thanks for your attention. Thank you.
So this was a good reality check. It seems that we have been in the future this morning, and now we are again and a bit in the past or in reality. So a lot needs to happen to make that change that we want to see and we discussed in the morning possible. And especially if we consider that many people still don't have any access to electricity. And we want to hear now more from Fiza Farhan about how we can provide exclusive benefits for inclusive development. And for those of you who haven't met yet, Fiza Farhan, she is an entrepreneur and she's also the Global Strategic Development Advisor and member of the UN High-Level Panel on Women Economic Empowerment. And maybe one word here about women. Some futurists say the future is renewable, it's decentralized, but it's also female. So thank you.
For that great opening note. Good morning, everybody, again. Just to continue what we were talking about in the morning, I will give some insights into my own journey being a woman in the energy sector, working for the problems of the energy-related crisis in Pakistan, which many of you are familiar with. So as a brief introduction, I'm a practitioner and an entrepreneur from Pakistan who started her energy career at a very early stage when there was no other renewable energy career, I would say, at a very early stage when there was no other renewable energy company in the country. Forget about the fact that there was any woman in the energy sector, and for many years I used to be the only woman in a room of 100 men in the energy sector, which was quite not a problem only specific to Pakistan, I would say, but a global problem which is now reversing. With the fact that today I think we have 30% approximately ACEF participation as women, and 12% ministries globally are led by women in the energy sector, and the Federal Minister of Pakistan for climate change is a woman. So I think we've come a long way, and what I want to talk about today is my journey of how how the evolution happened in the energy sector globally in Pakistan, and how that led to all the solutions we have today. Because in the world where we are today, we have the solutions, we have the technology, we have the right pricing, we have the government frameworks. What we need next is action, and collaborative action in partnerships, right? So just to set the theme a little bit, I would like to go beyond a bit and then talk about the evolution of energy and the trend that the energy sector has seen in the past few years, just to set the tone of how I got into the work that I was doing in Pakistan. So access to electricity globally, if you look at the numbers, increased from 73% in about 1990 to about 85% in 2014. Now, if you see these numbers, obviously it looks fantastic, right? Access to electricity grew. But if you look at the marking with the geographical dispersion, the middle-income countries or the low-income developing world is still seen to be in the challenging zone as far as access to electricity is concerned. Obviously, with the brunt being transferred maximum to the rural economies and to the women and the children in many of these countries. If this is not okay? Oh, you have to press it there. Secondly, if you move on from the access to the consumption, while obviously industrialization is growing, the worlds are growing at a very fast pace, while access to electricity was growing, the consumption has also been at a very historically growing trend around the world. In 2015, the world consumed 146,000 terawatt hours of primary energy, more than 25 times what we consumed in 1800. And 42% of that has been centered in Asia Pacific. So the world that we're talking about here is one of the most highly consuming nation as far as energy is concerned, and hence the problems of energy access heighten in this part of the world. Especially if you look at the mix of energy, which is maximum from coal and crude oil and the informal fossil fuels, leading to a very high climate degradation effect, and very low from the RE or the renewable energy spectrum, which is now going towards a positive trend. Going back to Pakistan, because that's where I had my experiences, that's where I've had my journey of evolution in the energy sector, and the energy sector in Pakistan itself has evolved tremendously. For many of you, I'm sure you're familiar with Pakistan and the fact that we're going through one of our worst energy nightmares, which started off in 2008 as an energy crisis and has now kind of become a reality that everybody lives through. With 18 to 12 hours of blackouts, depending upon the locality, with rural areas obviously being hit maximum by this energy burden, and the average deficit of generation and consumption being 6,000 megawatts, which is the average energy deficit the country is currently facing. Just to give you a fact which is not based on this slide, the solar potential of Pakistan estimated today stands at 100,000 megawatts. So while the deficit stands at 6,000 megawatts, we're looking at a solar potential of 100,000 megawatts, which is kind of, for me, for an entrepreneur, for somebody who's out there to get something done, makes absolute logical business sense to just go out in the solar field and start doing the business of solar, right? Because there's so much potential, the sun is shining bright. And while we have 6,000 megawatts of deficit, the potential that lies out there is 100,000 megawatts. So what is it that's stopping us, right? Why do we still have a deficit when all the numbers are so absolutely clear to all of us? That's what we want to unveil during the following days at ACEF as well, I believe. So the effects of electricity shortage, just to highlight what we discussed in the panel this morning as well, that access to energy or electricity shortage in countries like Pakistan, in developing countries like Pakistan, are not just an environmental issue anymore. It's not just about the degrading effects on climate that we're causing with burning fossil fuels and crude oil and coal-based energy. It's not just the social impact of the women and the children getting the maximum burden, with 80% of the climate injustice being transferred to the woman. It's an economic burden now. It's an economic problem now, right? Because with every 10% loss of energy to the industry in Pakistan, the cost to the industry in terms of production and efficiency is 50%. Many of the industries in Pakistan have had to close down because they could not sustain in this hard time of energy crisis in the past few years. So energy and the issue of resolving energy is not just a social concern anymore. It's not just an environmental concern. It's a cause of survival. It's a cause of economic survival for the industry. And as you can see from this graph itself, the per capita energy consumption in Pakistan has been depleting. with the industrial sector being hit the most. And since the GDP of the country is foremost provided for by agriculture and secondly by industry, that has had a direct effect on the GDP growth. So energy has become inevitably, as we discussed in the panel this morning, a critical priority for the governments, a critical priority for the private sector, a critical priority for the civil society, because without energy, you can't really do anything. So be it social development causes or be it running the country, energy has become one of the key issues that we're now focusing on. The solutions for me still remain to be simple, which I've kind of learned through my experiences, and I hope I can kind of penetrate that through the larger national policy. Now, again, I'm going to go back to where I started off in the energy sector in Pakistan and just share with you the personal story because it has many lessons for many young entrepreneurs here. It has many lessons for experienced, mature entrepreneurs here, for women, for young people in this room. I started off my energy journey in Pakistan in 2008, right? The challenges at that time were such that 47% of the population was off-grid. So 47% of 200 million people were living absolutely off-grid, in the dark. There was no grid access. There was no renewable energy company, no solar PV EPC company, or no ESCO in the country at that time. No government framework for solar, no regulatory policies for solar, no willing investor. It was a time where we would go to anybody to invest in solar and they would be like, why? This energy crisis is temporary, it's going to go away. Why are you taking it so seriously? Within that nascent virgin market, I realized there was a lot of potential for going in as being the first PV company because anywhere you would go, be it a rural village where there's no electricity, be it a dairy company which has milk chillers that shut down for 8 to 18 hours and have huge commercial losses, be it a bank which has an ATM that doesn't operate and the state bank is penalizing them, or be it a factory that shuts down because it doesn't have power, solar was the solution to everybody. And that's how we set up two social enterprises in Pakistan in 2008, Baksh Foundation and Baksh Energy, which were working on multiple renewable energy solutions across the tier. There were lots of concerns, there were lots of calls for failure. You're going to fail because the energy crisis is going to resolve. It's just a matter of a year. But it's been 10 years already, and the energy crisis has just about grown. And so has the industry, and so has the belief in the fact that the world needs to move towards a renewable source. The world needs to move towards a renewable trajectory to sustain itself. And I think that's the belief that has all of us here in this room. So what did we do? What did we do, right? As I said, when we set up the solar, when we set up the companies, and why solar? Again, because Pakistan, when you look at the geographical landscape of the country, promises a potential of 100,000 megawatts of solar, and the wind power is certainly a very key renewable energy source, but concentrated in the southern provinces, for those of you familiar with the country. So solar was a clear go because it's 90 megajoules of energy, daily sunshine across the belt, and hence the most potential source of renewable energy promised to be solar. Now, when we went into the market, and as I said earlier in my panel discussion, I'm not an engineer, I was never an energy expert. I was simply an entrepreneur, a businesswoman who was looking for ideas and for opportunities. And when I went out there, the opportunities were everywhere, right? So as I said, if you go into the rural villages, there was opportunity to set up solar charging stations, do solar electrification projects. We started working with the communities in setting up access to energy projects by simply setting up solar businesses. So all you had to do was put up a solar charging station, which was lighting solar lanterns. We realized that the telecos had done a greater job than the energy companies, and while 47% of the population did not have access to electricity, 86% had access to mobile phones, but they didn't know how to charge their mobile phones. So that gave us an opportunity to have solar mobile stations, and the case just built up. Further, we went in and we realized that engaging women in the communities just made much more sense because they have higher economic ownership of a project that they're looking at. Or they're working towards. So we started doing the project of light ladies, Roshna Bibis, as I call them. Roshna means light in Urdu, which later came to become one of the best international certified practice from the United Nations Foundation and got implemented in other countries. So when I keep saying simple solutions, we learned by doing. We learned by going out in the market. We learned by actually meeting people who had the problems and asking them, what is it that we can do for you? What are your problems? How can we make solutions for you and integrate them into a sustainable model? And those sustainable models then started becoming international best practices. And that's how, over 10 years, we launched multiple international best practices, from access to energy projects in what I call the microzones. This is actually how I started dividing my work then, because it was just all over the place initially, because everybody kind of had a problem as far as energy was concerned, and we sort of had the solution. So we decided kind of bifurcating our work into micro, meso, and macro, whereby micro was obviously related to the rural electrification, the light lady projects, which had immense social and humanitarian impacts as well, obviously, because when you're giving access to energy, it's not just access to light, it's access to life. You impact education, you impact health, you impact livelihoods, you impact, in some instances, criminal activity as well, and crime rates reduce as well with a direct proportional rate to access to energy, which was very fascinating for me, to be honest. When we moved on to the meso sector, as I call it, we started talking to the private sector in Pakistan, the dairy companies, Nestle, Halib Foods, Engro. We started talking to the telecommunication companies who had their spread in 86% of the geography, but out of that, 36% did not have access to electricity. So they were burning extremely expensive diesel-based generators, battery-operated inverters to sustain their operations, which was incurring twice the cost for their operations that they would in a normal circumstance where they were given access to energy. So for these guys, energy access was not just a social cause anymore, or for them to be saying that they're environmentally green or they're working towards SDG number 7. It was an absolutely pure commercial decision. If they wanted to increase their profits by 20 to 30%, they had to opt for renewable energy. So the meso sector was the guys that we talked to, including the dairy companies, the telecommunication companies, the multinational sectors, the banks, and we asked them that what is your most profit-driven component that we can convert on solar so that A, you have sustainable operations, B, you have reliable energy, and C, you increase your profits. Hence, a pure commercial business case. And that is what took up our solar projects across the private sector. Banks started converting their ATMs to solar. We started off with one bank as a demonstration in 2008, and today all 11 banks of the country are converting their ATMs to solar. We started off with Nestle as one of our first partners. You see, obviously, whenever you enter a nascent space, it's that first solar ATM that calls for the demonstration. It's that first solar milk chiller that proves the case and the pilot test, and then others follow. Just before coming here last week, we inaugurated a 12.5 megawatt project, a solar field for a private sector company. So now the numbers are just going big, and I think the proof of concept has been established. And the fact that it's not just going to be an environmentally right decision, it's going to be a commercially right decision is something that the private sector now understands. Lastly, as again we discussed in the panel this morning, when you're looking for solutions for a country, you cannot just focus on the rural villages and the private sector. The government has to play its part. At the time when we started our work in the renewable energy sector, the government in Pakistan had absolutely no SOPs or no blueprints to go to focus on renewable energy projects. There was no concept of a solar IPP. The alternate energy development board, so to speak, had small kind of policies revolving around solar, but nothing major happening. We started off again in 2008 with solar IPPs, and again, Baksh was the first company that won the first solar tariff of 16 cents in the country. However, as we discussed earlier, the government needs to be the steerer, it needs to steer the direction of these projects, not row the boat. And we realized that by making the government the main regulator for policies, for incentives, for regimes that support the private sector to drive this action. And today, after years of negotiating with the government, we've been able to have very successful interventions by the government, such as net metering, which is now a success in the country, and a practical execution whereby households are selling back to the grid any excess energy they produce to solar. Zero imports on duty, obviously, is something that we've achieved a long time back, but green financing has really helped, and again, this is something that I would love to discuss with financial institutions later on, because that has spurred the growth of solar in the country tremendously, when the government and the state bank came together to offer green financing products and made it easier for the consumer to get rid of the capex burden that initially comes up. So, Again, going back to the theme of ACEF this year, partnering for impact, this is really the truth and the success factor that made us grow in Pakistan. When all these different stakeholders came together, be it from the rural villages, be it from the private sector organizations, or be it from the government stakeholders, but everybody had to play their part to create the ecosystem that we have today in Pakistan towards, which is now ready to scale up. It has taken us a decade to come here, but I believe now we're in the position that we can now see the scale coming up with new technologies, with new financing, and with new partnerships disclosing amongst the existing ecosystem. So just to kind of give a graphical representation of this evolution I talked about, and we moved from a point where our renewable energy was not even in the mix of energy as far as the country was concerned, to where we have not a significant, but I would say a noticeable share in the energy mix. And I would say that from a point, again, where initially we were the only solar energy company in the country, to a point today where if you launch an RFP, at least 10 competitive bids come up. It has become an ecosystem, a competitive ecosystem where there are lots of stakeholders now actively working together towards pursuing solar energy. Because you realize that renewable energy or going green is not just the right thing to do, it is also the smart thing to do. You realize that it is a critical need for any industry to operate. It is a critical need for any business to sustain. And that is really what has made renewable energy a core reality of a country like Pakistan, which is in its developing equation itself. And obviously inclusion has been one of the key driving factors, which I'll talk about later as well. So where are we today? The RE sector, obviously, the ecosystem has been built up where the investments have increased. Just last year, up to 42% investments increased in the RE sector itself. The government's buy-in has increased, pricing has reduced, obviously we all know about that. And there's been tremendous demand by the private sector for now taking up solar in their own hands. Again, as I said, we've also kind of realized that the government needs to steer the direction, whereas the private sector needs to build sustainable practices, sustainable energy itself. And that's why the direction is now going towards captive solar power plants, whereby every private sector company has its 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, 4, 5 megawatts of solar energy running on their own infrastructure. And that, I feel, is the future of developing countries like Pakistan, because the private sector has the muscle, both financial and technical, to sustain themselves and hence sustain the economy in which they're operating, or in the economy that they're driving. Now, what was happening in the industry globally, while the industry obviously in Pakistan was evolving? It's interesting to know that, and we've been talking about this, and that's why we're all here as well, the industry globally had also been evolving, with a maximum share of solar and wind investments taking up to 47% in 2016. So solar and wind is, or renewable energy, I would say, biomass obviously takes the third precedence, is not only becoming a reality in countries like Pakistan, where it is a critical development indicator to focus on and work on if you want to grow, but the evolution is growing globally as well. And one very, very interesting, obviously, thing that has, I think, spurred this growth has been the decreasing pricing of solar globally. And in Pakistan, this has been a key factor for us, for me as an entrepreneur, and obviously to make commercial sense out of the whole solar proposition. And for the governments to also support it, because now it's not just, it's not just environmentally right to go on solar, but it actually makes commercial sense. In our house in solar, just to give you a personal context, in our house in Pakistan, when we get, and I live in Lahore, which is, if many of you know, it is one of the key cities of the country, we experience 6 to 8 hours of blackouts every day. So imagine like 6 to 8 hours of absolutely no light every single day. Now, what options do we have? I can either use my diesel generator, which costs me a tremendous amount of wear and tear, as well as pouring in gasoline and diesel every day, high cost of O&M, or I can use a battery-operated inverter, which again is not just costly, but also extremely unreliable. I converted my house to solar, and it has actually been a commercial case. And lots of my friends and family then converted on solar, not just because I was pitching it, being an energy person in the country, but just because it made commercial sense, and it's an economically viable thing to go on solar now. So any individual or any private sector company or the government, if they're looking for commercial dividends, solar seems to be the solution. So there's absolutely no rocket science behind it. It's just the commercially right thing to do. It's a smart thing to do. It's the thing that we all should kind of focus on and do. Similarly, over the last 10 years, we've seen this graph earlier as well in the presentation. The renewable energy costs kept falling, while the nuclear energy was on an increasing trend, giving the same precedence that over the years, we realized that solar energy or renewable energy is not just the environmentally right thing to do, it's not just the socially right thing to do, but it is the most commercially viable solution that the world has right now to save money and go green as well. Just a recap of where we came in the 10 years in my mind. Apart from the fact that in Pakistan, the solar industry completely evolved and matured in the last 10 years. And I think many other developing countries have similar stories where when they started off, it looked like a no-go area. Everybody used to tell you that, this is not going to be possible. Who's going to go on solar? To the point today that we launched a 12.5 megawatt solar project financed by the government, installed in Pakistan, to the future where there are lots of innovations that are being welcomed now. Emory is being invited by the Prime Minister to come and advise him on what next can we do, what else can be done. So things are opening up. In this trajectory of evolution, just to recap, the 4 key things that kind of strike for me in the evolution of renewable energy or access to energy in the last 10 years has been, number 1, the fact that technology and best practices evolved. We don't need to now go around looking for technology. Technology is all there, from basic PV technology to electric cars, to everything that we've been talking about, solar PV panels on buildings, to hydroelectrics. We have all kinds of technology available. We have best practices available, not just in access to energy areas, but for large-scale industry installations as well. Net metering, all kinds of best practices, all kinds of case studies, all kinds of technologies are readily available to the world now, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to reinvent the technology again and again. It's all readily available there. The regulatory frameworks have been established. So when we started off in Pakistan again, we went to the government for the first solar IPP, and they did not have any forms to give us. When you go to a government department, they give you lots of forms to fill in. There was no standard SOP, there was no standard regulation, there was no standard document to be handed over. But slowly over the years, I think we worked very closely together to build those SOPs, to build those regulatory frameworks. And today it is an industry. Today it is a governed, regulated department where you go and you're given the entire chalkboard of what needs to be done. So things have evolved. We have systems, we have regulatory frameworks, we have incentives that we need to make use of to make it a commercially viable proposition. The technology pricing has reduced. We've talked about it earlier. We just talked about it now. Solar has been, has seen tremendous leaps and bounds as far as cost reduction has been concerned, and that has been one of the key reasons for its success over the years, making it cheaper than the informal fossil fuels to be adapted. And most importantly for me is the fact that interest by the stakeholders has increased. The fact that ACEF in 2008 had 300 participants, and today we have 1,300 participants in 2019, with 30% participation from women, that is for me very important, because that comes to say that we have stakeholders who are interested in the business of energy, who are interested in the business of going green. We have women who are coming up and stepping up to come up with the 12% ministries that we now have, because energy itself is not, it's a humanitarian issue. Everybody has to come together. All stakeholders have to come together. And the fact that this room is full today, for me, kind of promises for that fact that we can now have scalable, exponential solutions, because all the stakeholders seem to be interested in taking the energy proposition up. So it's not just the government's thing anymore, it's not just the private sector's thing anymore, or banks like ADBs do finance, it's for all of us to work on in our individual and institutional capacity. So the evolution has been great, right? And we're certainly headed in the right direction. Things are looking fantastic. Yet, 1.1 billion people still live in the dark. That is 16% of this world's population. 2.2 million people die in Asia region in 2016 due to polluted air. 1.7 million children under 5 years die because of environmental risks. 47% of the population in Pakistan is still off-grid and living in the dark. The primitive sources like candles, kerosene lamps, fossil fuels claim the lives of 1.5 million people every year through fires. The climate injustice has the maximum burden on the women and children of this world, with 80% of the climate injustice and the climate damages being transferred down to the women, especially in primitive rural areas. Now, with all these, on one side, and this kind of boggles my head, and I would love to boggle your head as well while you're going towards ACEF for the whole week. The fact that we have all the technologies in place, the fact that we have government financing, the fact that we have multilateral banks like ADB financing billions of dollars towards renewable energy, the fact that we have technology in place, best practices, pricing is cheaper than fossil fuels. Why do we have energy as still a primitive solution that is not just now a problem of access to light, it's a problem of access to life? Why are 16% of the world's population still living in the dark? Why are children still dying every day, every minute because of burning kerosene and fossil fuels? Why? This is the question that we need to ask ourselves here. There was a yeah, okay. So this is the question that, because with my experience, we've been working in the sector for more than a decade and a half. Things are very positive, things are very rosy. But yet, when I look back, when I look at the entire market out there, it seems to be a virgin market still. It seems to be a market where there's so much opportunity to do all kinds of work. To kind of start from a lantern or go to a big hydel dam or a power plant or a 12.5 megawatt, 100 megawatt solar project. That's the entire industry of impact. Every watt matters. Every dollar matters. So, because I wanted to kind of set the stage here, there's a whole week of deep dive workshops and great networking, and I'm sure all of you will come up with fantastic ideas and business deals. I wanted to kind of leave you with three kind of messages that I've learned from my experiences. And as I said, I don't think I'm any energy expert. I learn by doing. I'm going to learn something today, so it's just learning by doing, really. So three things that I've actually learned by going out in the field, by meeting the people who are affected, by being there with those people. Number one, that access to energy has to be an inclusive solution. The problem is multidimensional, the problem is highly complex, involves multiple stakeholders, but the solution has to be inclusive. We need to include the women of this world, from ministries to my Roshan Abibis. We need to include them throughout the nexus. We need to have more youth, more young people in the room, because that's where we get innovative mindsets to come on board. It is a humanitarian issue, and it needs to be dealt with the entire humanity on board. So it has to be an inclusive solution. All solutions we need to work on need to include all stakeholders, which leads me to my second important point, partnerships. And I'm very, very delighted to see that ACEF has adapted that very key learning of partnering for impact. Because without partnerships, I don't think we can achieve scalable solutions. Without partnerships, each one of us is going to be working in our own silos and creating lots of fancy innovations or working on projects, but not really getting the impact that is deserving to maximize the impact per dollar invested. So partnerships for impact is definitely one of the key messages to achieve the scale that we need to achieve to actually make an impact on the lives of those 16% of the world's population that still lives in the dark, despite the fact that we have all kinds of expertise, funding, financing, technology on the table. And lastly, the fact that solutions for me lie in simple steps. The problems are very complicated, but the steps are very simple. While we do need to focus on innovations, and the world keeps innovating every day, there is new technology coming up every day, the solutions are very simple. So from a solar lantern to a solar power plant, whatever solution that you can execute in your domain, just go out and do it. Because that is really what the world needs right now. We have the technologies, we have the policies, we have the regulatory frameworks, we have the expertise. What we need now is the action. So on this note, I'm going to, I wish you all a fantastic ACEF 2019 and the rest of the week. And I wish to meet you all again next year with tangible results and transformative actions to celebrate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fiza. You've set very high expectations here. It's all about doing in the next couple of days. And you highlighted the importance of new partnerships. And with that, I would like to please welcome Woo Chong-um. He is our Director General of the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department, and he will share with us what we are doing at ADB in terms of new partnerships.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm supposed to be announcing something today, but since I have the microphone, I'm going to say some few other things. Normally, we thank the people who are behind organizing this thing at the very end. But by then, we lose a lot of people, so I thought I would thank the key people like David, Elsinger, and Yong-Ping, Susan, and all those people working behind the scenes who's made this another successful launch of ACEF 2019. A huge thank you. So let me just clap for that. And Fiza, thank you for reminding us of the evolution of ACEF. In 2008 it was 300 and now it's 1,300. But we actually started 2005-ish when we actually only had like 80 people. And through these years, I love coming to this ACEF just to walk around and feel the energy. And in doing that, I ran into a few people like Chander, my former boss, Jong-in Kim, Pilbe, Ajay Guha, Aiming Zhao, Toru Kubo, and I think Sam Tumia, who's our country director for Afghanistan, is watching through live stream as well. And some of the participants, I see them every year, over and over again. And I only see them actually here, once a year. So I really appreciate the enthusiasm and energy that's brought by the participants. And it really feels like a renewable energy to me, I think, the participants. And this year's theme is very, very relevant because it's about partnering for impact. And today I learned so much during the opening panel, Dr. Lovins, and it's good to see you again, real live person, because we saw him in hologram in 2011. You're much better looking in real life than in hologram. And all the panel members, it was a real eye-opener for me to learn about all the energy solutions, all the technology solutions, which is making our ambitions possible. So we must deploy new technology. If you're going to have a behavioral change that will have a chance of cutting 26% of CO2 emissions by 2040 to meet the 2-degree scenario. Now, that's the good news. Now, the challenge is that ADB is very good in many things, and historically ADB has been very good at providing financing for projects using existing technology. So what we normally do is we identify a project, we identify the type of technology, and we send out the bid for people to bid at the lowest technology. But now there's a paradigm shift, so we gotta deploy new technology, so we can't do the same thing. So what do we do? How do we identify new technology and finance them? Over the weekend, I'm sure many of the fathers in this group celebrated Happy Father's Day, right? So I'm one of them, and I have a father. And I was searching through internet, okay, what am I gonna say is a nice thing to my dad, right? And Happy Father's Day. And this one particular quote caught my eye, and which was, as men age, there's a point in time when he realized that his father was always right. That's the good news. But unfortunately, that's the very moment is when his own son realized that you're wrong. Yeah, so I decided to message my son who's studying somewhere else and ask, you smart guys, we have this challenge of new technology, what are we gonna do? And obviously he doesn't know the context of ADB, so he didn't say, I don't know, but instead he quoted another person, who's Einstein, I think he said, the craziest thing to do is to do the same thing and expect a different result. So you gotta do something different whatever it is, do something totally different. So today we decided to launch the ADB Innovation Technology Challenge, which aims to accelerate the understanding of innovative technology adoption and adaptation in developing member countries by crowding in the technology providers, not just the business as usual. And this challenge is financed by the High-Level Technology Fund supported by the government of Japan. So our energy team and Susan and the innovation group identified 3 related development challenges related to energy. We're not going to tell you what they are yet because it is a challenge. And this will seek proposals from which will describe possible solutions in the context of developing member countries, and the winning challenges proposals will get grants either to do further study or possible implementation of the solution. So if you're interested in participating in this challenge, and I can tell you if you're a technology provider, you better be interested in this one because there's money behind it. Please join us tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the K-Hub, which is on the other side of our building, with the Starbucks. And that's where this will be unveiled. And we'll have a very, very exciting challenge to implement. So we hope that all of you can help us transform ADB to this new technology deployer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chong. Yeah, we do hope to see you all tomorrow during this lunch session. Before we move to the last part of the morning opening plenary, I'd like to also kind of draw your attention to Keisuke Takatani, who is our live recorder. So although we speak about new technologies, we also use traditional old technologies, and we are creating a system of the discussion points that we have all said today to kind of highlight the multiple stakeholders and the ecosystem that is required. And now, please, I would like to invite our Chief of the Energy Sector Group, Yongping Zai, to provide us with impact stories, one specific one from the Philippines. And I'd also like to say, really, that our chief here, Yongping, is one of our visionaries in the bank and is definitely leading us to a better future as a development bank to support the energy sector in Asia Pacific.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Susan, for introducing me. I'm the Chief of Energy Sector Group. The theme of this ACEF this year is impact, partnering for impact. Talking about impact, I've been in this bank, working in this bank, basically in the energy sector, same position for 20 years. During these 20 years, I have worked project like $1 billion transmission project, $100 million renewable energy project, $10 million energy efficiency project. I can go on. And the latest project I have participated cost $100,000, yet with the highest impact I've ever seen. So for this project, I have invited the partners involved in this project to come and join me to share their experience. But before that, I would like to we show the video first so that we have an idea of what kind of project is about. Can we start the I think we are closer to people, closer to the ground. And this is a grassroots project. We can feel the impact. There are so many places we can share your success today. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the story I would like to share with you. For this, I would like to invite Mr. Ludovico Lim, General Manager of Antique Electric Cooperative, and Ms. Lilia Narida, Vice President of Finance of One Renewable Energy Enterprise, who is the private stakeholder as part of this project. They will join me and talk about the Malalisan project. So, Mr. Lim and Mrs. Narida, we met in the village. I guess you never imagined you would come to this audience and share your story in front of so many people. In fact, that after that visit, on that side, we decided, together with the Vice President, that we should invite you to this audience today at the opening of the ACEF. Now, Mr. Lin, thanks to, again, joining this ACEF. Can you say something about your organization, Anteco, and what's the primary reason for your cooperatives undertaking this Malalisan Solar Hybrid project, please?
Thank you, Mr. Sai. First, I would like to extend our warm greetings to all the participants in this Asia Clean Energy Forum. We would like also to thank EDB for inviting us today to share our humble experience in bringing energy access to one of our remote barangays, the island of Malalisan. Our electric cooperative is one of the 119 electric cooperative, which is a non-stock, non-profit electric cooperative owned by the member consumers it serves. Our primary mandate is to electrify all the household levels within our franchise area. This covers the 16 municipalities in the province of Antique. And while we have reported 100% energization in terms of municipal and barangay levels, we still have about 8% in terms of household that still needs to be provided by electricity. However, with the barangays that are reported energized, there are still barangays that are considered underserved because they are only provided less than 24 hours electricity. And one of these is Malalisan Island, which only has 4 hours electricity service every day. Thus, we would like to thank EDB for the opportunity and assistance that we were able to provide 24/7 electricity service to the island by putting up the solar hybrid facility backed with energy storage and prepaid metering service.
Thank you, Mr. Lin. And Ms. Narida, you are representing the private sector partner of this project. Can you tell us what prompted you and your organization to invest in this project?
First of all, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for inviting us to this conference. Ori is a solar integrator. We serve 2 markets. We do solar PV rooftops for developers, and we also supply the government with solar pumps for agriculture. Since we are a small business entity, we cannot really have enough capital to invest in a big build. So we welcome the opportunity to be able to have equity in a microgrid. Just to tell everyone, there are 1,700 islands just like Malalisan, but because there are many challenges, people are not really investing. So we hope that the success of this pilot will encourage other SMEs to invest in this project.
Thank you very much. Now, can we talk about a little bit about impact? We're talking about impact. So
how this project changed the lives of people in the island. What specific examples, things you have seen, the lives of women, children, and business. What about the services of the local government, how you are dealing with them? So can you start, Mr. Lim?
Yeah, actually, when we proposed the project to the barangays, we have seen the enthusiasm and the eagerness of the people to be able to be provided with a continuous power supply. For so long, the barangay had only been provided by a single phase 25 kilowatt diesel generator. And it only provides for our service. But when we proposed the project, eagerness, thus cooperativism among the people there would be seen. They have facilitated and headed by the barangay officials and the barangay captain for the approval of the use of the government land for us to put up the solar hybrid facilities. During the construction period, cooperativism also could be seen among the folks. They had provided their assistance in hauling the materials from the mainland to the island. They also have provided their assistance for cooking the food of our personnel who are doing the constructions, as well as the rehabilitations of the line. And of course, we did not encounter problems in acquiring a right-of-way where to put up our distribution line, as well as where we pass materials for the construction, including the equipment in going to the island. Actually, it was the locals who provided transportation for the hauling of materials. When the project was already completed, actually, one impact is that the island was become peaceful, because before one single generator is placed in the middle of the barangay. So during the time that it runs from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., the island is very noisy because of the noise brought about by the diesel generator. When our solar hybrid facility was energized, the island became peaceful. And of course, the impact is mostly, we could say, on a different aspect. On the Andeco side, it reduces our cost in meter reading and billing our member consumers. Before they are being billed postpaid. Now, because of the prepaid, we don't have to meter read and bill the consumer monthly. On the part of the consumer, they were able to manage their consumptions according to their capacity to pay. Thus, everybody consumes electricity according to their needs, and they were able to manage their budget. On the other hand, considering that we have blended the rate, the cost in Malaliso with the main grid, we were able to provide a lower cost in the island. Thus, it provided excess budget to the household. Thus, they were able to buy appliances. Some were able to already have refrigerators, as well as other appliances for the comfort of their livelihood. And also it provided continuous hour for the students to learn during night.
Thank you very much, Ms. Narida. What's your observation?
Oh, I have observed that the transition from postpaid to prepaid is actually very smooth. And I think it's because more than 90% of Filipinos are actually prepaid phone users. One impact that I have actually seen is I was tracking the energy generated from the time that we have a 24/7, and it was 2,000 kilowatts. And the last report I got in May, it was already 14,000. And as GM Lim said, it's actually people who are doing small businesses. They're buying refrigerators, they're buying air conditioners to improve their fishing and homestay.
Thank you very much. I would like actually to propose we hear more of these impact stories directly from the beneficiaries, from villagers. We have a video of that to show, please.
halimbawa, may kahoy kasi gamit na dito kahoy. Pag nagsaing o kaya pag nagluto. Hindi tulad po ngayon, may rice cooker. Kahit di ka na lalabas sa bahay, makapagluto ka, di ba? Kasi noon, maghagilap pa ng kahoy. Wala kang mahagilap kasi.
Pag mag-alaga po ako na anak ko, like may sakit, okay naman po kasi may ilaw. Di po katulad dati na talagang lampara lang po yung gamit.
Mahirap po yung kung habi ko sa 24 hours na kuryente. Yung dati 4 hours yung walang kuryente namin. Halimbawa, nag-is kami. Pupunta pa sa mga kapitbahay namin yung masyadong dito. Natatak pa doon. Babayag pa ng 400 pesos.
Ang ginagamit namin dito, generator. Hirap kasi minsan wala kang baterya ng cellphone, hindi ka makapag-charge. Tapos limitado din yung mga gamit na pang-kuryente, di ba? Dami nagbago kasi pwede ka nang manood ng TV, tanghali. May electric fan ka na kung gusto mong magkahanap ng electric fan kapag mainit. Tapos hindi na rin ako nahihirapan mag-andar ng motor kasi may kuryente na eh.
Sa ngayon sarili nga, isip ko na, may guest ka, wala na. Libre yun, walang problema. Kaya komportable dito dating sa mga guest.
Yun nga, yung dinidesire ko talaga magkaroon ng 24 hours kasi yung desire ko doon mag-shake ako, magbibinta ako ng ice, maggagawa ako ng mga ice candy, tapos mag-frozen food po ako. Parang binuksan po namin yung yung piggy bank. Alam mo ba sir, nagkaroon kami ng 11,000 pesos. Kaya tuwa po kami ng asawa ko.
Bumili po ako ng freezer, yung yellow po at saka yung ice candy po. Yun po yung pinagtitinaan ko ngayon. Yung fixed income ko po sa yellow at saka sa ice candy po. Nasa 4K na rin po, pero hindi pa po umabot ng isang buwan.
Ma-monitor mo, makita mo ang load mo kung pira lamang mo. Kung gusto mo daw gamay load mo, kagura ni ko itang load, pinay-hinay ko sa paggamit.
Tapos ngayon yun po, titingnan lang namin, kapag mababa na nasa 100, nagre-red na siya. Pero pag medyo mataas, mga 101, 102, kulay green siya. Kaya kung alam po namin na red na siya, mababa na siya sa 100, naglo-load na po kami.
Raya, iba. Raya ang diferensya. Mas pinakamayad ang prepaid.
Kahit gusto mong may pupuntahan ka pag gabi, hindi ka makakapunta kasi nga madilim.
Pero ngayon, okay na. Mas stable na kasi yung voltahe. Kaya hindi na ako makakakagis na kainan.
Kaya nagpapasalamat po ako na 24/7 na po yung kuryente namin.
Kaya kumbaga lahat naging easy na po yung namin. Kumbaga naging madali po talaga.
It's a great impact story, right? So far it's been great story, success, but I want to ask both of you, what are the challenges you see, difficulties, constraints, and further support, what do you need from ADB and other development partners? Mr. Linton.
Maybe first, one is regulatory change, because at present, while we already have energized the project, we still have to comply with some regulatory requirements. Another, since we started operating the project last January 2019, we projected that the capacity we installed will be overloaded by about 3 years or 4 years, but from the start, January 2019, with the demand of 12 kilowatt, for the last 4 months, 5 months, it now rises to 37 kilowatt. It's about to be overloaded already and needs for expansion. On the part of operation and maintenance, considering that Anteco is a distribution utility, our expertise is focused mostly on line operation and maintenance. So we rely mostly on our partner, One Renewable Energy, in providing the technical operation and maintenance, hoping that we could come up with a framework later on for them to provide the operation and maintenance for our cooperative. And of course, we rely mostly on our equipment supplier to train our personnel for us to be able ready to come later on do a little troubleshooting with the system for us to become independent later. The greatest challenge that we are looking is considering that this is already a success with this one island, we still have about 8 island barangays that remains to be provided with 24/7 services. Now the challenge is on how we could replicate the same to those islands, and we are hoping that with this forum there might be some interested business enterprise or interested individuals that might partner with us or help us through our government so that we could provide energy access to those remaining households, not only in our coverage area, but all over the country, the Philippines.
Thank you, Ms. Narita. What you see problems, challenges?
The challenge is still regulatory, as GM Lim said, but the OE has recently issued a circular that will hopefully fast-track the deployment of small RE projects.
Thank you very much, both of you, for sharing your stories and thoughts. Before I close this session, I would like to share beautiful music played in the island by musicians and the children. Actually, I wanted to invite the school children, but they said they are in school, still attending school, not a good season to come here. So, but I managed to invite the musician, the guitarist, Mr. Jory Amora, who is here. I would like to invite our guitarist to come. And this, when we were in the island, we were greeted by a group of children, musicians, and they composed a special song for this success, for this project. I hope we show the lyrics of this song as well in English and original. Shall we start with the video?
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Nadimdaman ko kato ang amon kuryente bukod pa diri-diritso nagalantaw kami ng palabas sa TV kung di nagkakilig sa teleserye kagabiritin nga kuryente kay alas 6 kag alas 10 patay dun ang amon kuryente sa isla sangka generator lang nagasuporta sa mararisen kong gabi Garmelman kisa patay sindi ang amon kuryente sa isla sa tiyempo kang mga kamalaman warat kuryente sandangan na batyagan kanamigin sa maralisin. Sa maralisin, dali ka mo sa maralisin. Hagad umiyak ang mga biyan, kanamigin sa maralisin. Kanamigin sa maralisin, ang isla ka maralisin. Kruhay!
Okay, while we take the photo here, I want to say every partnership needs motivation. I think purpose is the biggest factor for motivation. So this was definitely showed the purpose for everyone why we are here, to make a difference. Now we're coming to lunch. So lunch will be served at the executive dining room, which is upstairs, the stairs there. And for those of you who don't need to eat, as you know, less calorie intake is better for you. I'm a medical doctor, so let me tell you that. You can continue right away to the ocean economy session at our knowledge hub that is in the library, where you can also get coffee. And then we will continue with the afternoon session, and this is obviously in your program. So this is now the closing of the plenary session today. Thank you very much for your participation, for your contributions, and wishing you a very impactful next 4 days.